Well, here we are now on to the final level in Kirby's Return to Dreamland, at least on the main game. And that's what appears to be World 8, or Level 8 as far as what I meant to say. That's what appears to be another dimension, because after all, about the fact that after we defeated Landura, and basically once we're able to get our crown, well, it turns out about the fact that Megalord did somehow manage to able to utilize that particular crown, which somehow possessed him and turned into somewhat evil variation of Megalord. So we definitely need to stop him for good, but this time we're going on to the forms of the Nintendo Switch platform, and on top of that, 1080p with 60 FPS on top of that. So either way, yeah, and I was originally able to mention about the forms of the actual dialogue box during the forms of the actual cutscene as you saw in the beginning, but I don't feel like trying to mention about this time around, because, well, I've already did it on the forms within the Wii version of the game back in 2020, so I don't feel like trying to go through all that again. So anyway though, hey, what's up ladies and gentlemen, and I apologize for that particular late introduction thing as per usual. So because of this though, because I somehow got distracted by the forms of what's going on in this particular point. So, and it is I am the one and only Tiana here once again, and I'm back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos, as you probably expect at this point. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe for the Nintendo Switch. Basically a remake of the original Kirby's Return to Dreamland back on the Nintendo Wii. So last time we've completed World 7, which appears to be Dangerous Dinner. That was actually a pretty good run so far, especially concerning about the fact that, well, despite we come across into quite a few damage inputs here and there, but regardless of such though, we actually did a really good run for the sake of the forms of Dangerous Dinner. And on top of that, as I mentioned this earlier, we did somehow manage to defeat Landura, despite the fact that usually relatively speaking though, that as you can see, we're now going to be catching a ride on one of those Landuras. Because of this though, today for this video is that we're going to be moving on to the final world in terms of the actual main game for the likes of Kirby's Return to Dreamland itself, well, specifically the deluxe version of the game, but it wasn't until about the fact that we will come across into some interesting modes coming up once we finish up with this entire world, and that's what appears to be by the forms of another dimension. So either way, and of course, just like the forms of how it does it on the original Wii version throughout the game, basically we start the actual stage off by the forms of catching a ride with Landura by simply going through 3 different sections. Like the first 2 sections, you have to simply just keep on shooting certain enemies, and on top of that, avoiding certain hazards ranging between, you know, some crushing segments, and on top of that with the forms of that particular, well, some massive crystal stuff or something like that. And here we are onto the third and final segment of the forms of this particular Landura section. That we're going to be taking on the forms of not only lore, but also with Mega Lore as well. So because of this though, yeah, you see how to able to simply get out able to just keep shooting by pressing the, I want to say a B button or something like that. Mind you, it's been about 2 days ago since I actually have last played this for sure. Because, well, relatively speaking though, about the fact I'm pretty sure that Maxi is almost finishing up with Piglet's big game for the Game Boy Advance. So, relatively speaking though, that's all I can really say about this for the most part. So, anyway, so a few things I want to explain while this is happening is that obviously today's day is of course the 19th of April today, in this case in 2023 today. Oh, I definitely need some more food supplies because, well, despite the fact that this boss is overall pretty easy, although if you managed able to play this on extra mode, oh my god, that would be pretty tough though, especially because concerning about the fact it has more attacks, and on top of that about the fact that the actual damage output might be a bit too much for my liking. So either way though, that might be some consumption. So either way, so yeah, best advice for this is though is about the fact that I suggest you're able to do a bit of a charge up shot, because obviously it deals quite good amount of damage as far as I'm aware. And on top of all that stuff though, try not to rush for this, because otherwise you might as well get hit a lot. So, but relatively speaking though, most of those attacks are pretty easy to dodge. Well, apart from a couple of exceptions though, mind you. But either way though, because I was being quite hasty sometimes. But either way, let's go ahead and deal with him. And there goes Lore. And of course, Mega Lore is not done yet, because, well, relatively speaking, we can able to fight him for reals. But before we get on to that though, we have to watch that particular cinematic cutscene. Now, normally, I was originally trying to able to keep myself the sand copy ability for this fight, but I feel like that, much like the original version of the game, basically though, I think the actual spark ability will be my best friend. Especially concerning about the fact that, relatively speaking though, although I was originally trying to able to attempt to get the forms of the tornado ability, but of course I somehow managed able to just realize about the fact that the actual tornado ability does not exist, while assuming of course about the fact with this random copy ability slot. But either way though, I think Spark will be good enough as it is, especially concerning about the fact that again, if you're trying to able to go back and forth like left and right and stuff like that, you can able to actually just build up with your electric barrier, so that way you can able to protect yourself from not only in terms of its attacks, but also with the forms of certain other enemies as well. So because of this though, here we go on to the final boss, at least specifically the main mode in terms of Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, before we move on to the other selections of bosses coming up. So relatively speaking though about the fact that, like I said before, the Spark ability will be your best friend for specific reasons, because obviously, as I mentioned this earlier, if you're trying to create the electric barrier shield, well, you obviously going to be, well, protective and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think that's as far as I can try to explain about the forms of that particular strategy in mind. But again, I was originally trying to go after the tornado ability to make the boss fight a complete joke, but it turns out about the fact that we're probably not going to come across into that for a while. Especially concerning about the fact that, well, that might be some things to discuss upon. So, anyway, as I mentioned this before, today's date is of course the 19th of April today, in this case in 2023 today, and something tells me about the fact the matter is though, is that speaking of Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, potentially speaking, that until specifically this coming Friday, in this case the 21st of April, that Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe is actually getting its theme from the likes of Tetris 99. To be more specifically, Tetris 99 is now on to the 33rd Maximus Cup, which is going to be announced. They'll be featuring Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe theme. So yeah, it seems pretty cool, all things considered. Mind you, I still haven't exactly got myself Tetris 99 for myself. Well, that's just mainly because I used to like playing Tetris, but for whatever reason, I somehow stopped for a while. I'm guessing it's most likely because about the fact that I was more interested with other franchises, as you probably already know and pretty much expect at this rate. So either way though, that might be some things to classify for that. And on top of all that stuff though, about the fact that recently, during the forms of about, I would say since yesterday, that recently Disney Channel has recently turned 40 years old, since in 1983. So yeah, roughly the same name, or roughly the same year, as the forms of not only for Octopussy, you know, with Roger Moore's James Bond movie, but also with Luigi's first appearance, for the sake of the forms of the actual Mario universe. So yeah, that seems really, really nice to able to actually celebrate it with that specific matter. So, but either way though, oh, and on top of that, that recently there's actually going to be a new Nintendo Direct that's about to be up, specifically ND World. Like, to be more specifically about the fact the matter is though, it's been like, I would say, 5 months since the last ND World presentation has been up, since during the forms have been November last year in 2022. Well, despite the fact that it does have some very questionable decisions to go through, especially concerning about the fact that we still haven't got anything news related in terms of the forms of Hollow Knight Silk Song. But hopefully for this year, I'm hoping so anyway, they will definitely going to be mentioning about the forms of the Hollow Knight Silk Song. So hopefully that might be seems the case, but it's kind of hard to tell honestly, because either way, I'll explain more in a second, because as you can see, we have to rotate the control stick, which kind of reminds me of the forms of the finale portion of Kirby and the Forgotten Land as well, or potentially speaking that might be seems the case. So yeah, again, no need for motion controls or anything, it's just, you know, you have to rotate the control stick this time. And of course, as far as predictions, as far as I'm aware, this boss fight is not over yet, because obviously Megalore is going to turn into another form, so that seems a little bit more expected if you ever played the original version of the game before. So, but either way though, that's not that too surprising to be able to noticing this from the start. Yeah, it gets a little bit more interesting with this fight, especially that since about the fact that with the first phase of Megalore, basically you have to use the super abilities in order to able to, well, you can still able to actually utilize the Spark ability, as what I just did right there, and then able to deal the amount of damage to Megalore, but as soon as when it gets to the point that much like Grand Duma since in World 5, basically, excuse me, that there's going to be specific hit points that it's only be required for able to utilize the super abilities until you're able to deal the amount of damage for specific amount of attacks. So yeah, that's what I can say about this for the most part. And yeah, overall this boss fight is pretty easy, especially concerning about the fact that, well, again, this is pretty much a normal mode, so I can imagine about the fact that, oh, first things first, just go all the way to the left, just in case you don't want to get attacked by the Kamehameha technique when it comes to Megalore. So, but either way though, but as soon as we get to the halfway point of this phase of the fight, he will be start to be able to using super abilities of his own. So, meaning about the fact that you have to dodge a lot of his attacks. So, alright, it's best assured to, okay, so we should be alright from the far right. So, just in case that we will protect ourselves from that particular attack. So, but, yeah, as far as I'm aware about the fact that I think I'll let, I don't know if Maxi were able to mention more about it in during the forms of in the actual announcements they'll bring for the likes of ND World presentation, but I'm sure enough he will try he will try his best able to actually mention about that particular stuff and during at some point for Piglet's big game on the Game Boy Advance, or potentially speaking if Joy were able to mention more about it. Assuming, of course, that she will be back onto the forms of WarioWare Smooth Moves. So, yeah, that might be something worth classify for able to predicting certain things. So, but as you can see, that's, you know, he's actually be using his super abilities of his own. Like, for instance, these Ultra Swords and the Flame Monster, or Monster Flame, as far as this is concerned. So, but either way, there's something I would like to also mention about this as well, is that, well, remember I mentioned this countless amount of times already, that I finally managed to able to get myself Kirby's Dream Collection onto my American Wii? Well, as far as for my first impressions of that particular compilation is concerned, I honestly really enjoyed it so far. Especially I can finally get a chance to able to try out not only the forms of the new challenger stages that's usually brings something new to the table with certain abilities in mind, but also about the fact that I can finally get a chance to able to, you know, watch certain Kirby Right Back At You episodes on my Nintendo Wii console. Despite the fact that back in the day, I don't know if you noticed, but back in 2011, that, actually I'll talk more details about that until whenever we get to the next video of this, because obviously Megalore is finished and done, so relatively speaking it's a total piece of cake, especially because again, with Spark's shield technique, then it should be a piece of cake, and the crown has been destroyed, and there goes Megalore, and, well, I suppose we'll talk more about it until when we get through the credit sequence. And that's the ending to the likes of Kirby's Return to Dreamland as far as the main story is concerned. So, yeah, everything else returned to peace, and that's as far as I can say about it. And on top of all that stuff, though, is about the fact that since this is the Switch version of Kirby's Return to Dreamland, this also means about the fact that, as I mentioned this before, aside from the fact that you do manage to able to unlock not only the extra mode, which is essentially like the hard version of the main story mode, but as I said before about the fact that you do have a half unit of health, and on top of that, you do come across into harder variations of certain boss fights. And on top of that there's going to be an exclusive boss fight you come across into on the extra game. So because of this though, yeah, I think I should probably explain more details about that once we're proceeding for this game or something like that. So, but of course about the fact that I'm probably not going to go into my overall thoughts about the game just yet, because as I mentioned this before, about the fact that we still got a whole ways to go. Specifically, I believe we might be able to go back into the forms of the main story mode to tackle for the forms of not 1 but 9 challenge stages I'm about to tackle through, which I'm about to do at this Friday, around the same day as when Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp is going to be finally get its release on the Nintendo Switch after that particular delay since a year ago. And on top of that though, about the fact that we can also manage to able to realize that, well, I was originally though trying to able to go ahead and tackle through the arena, but I think I should probably save the arena until for later, because, well, as you probably already expect, it's basically a boss rush kind of mode, which I always attempt able to save that particular mode until on a later day, just because about the fact that, well, first off, as far as I want to point things out, is that once you finish up with the story mode for the first time, not only, as I said before, you do get yourself the extra mode as well as the arena, but there's also a special mode called Megalore Epilogue, which is basically, it takes place after the events of his defeat from the likes of the forms within the original Kirby's Return to Dreamland, so we finally know what really happens to Megalore, which I'm actually pretty excited about that particular special mode. But unfortunately though, that can wait until next week, because as far as I'm aware, like I said this before, first off, we need to take care of the forms of the final few bits for the likes of the main story mode until we move on to another things itself. So yeah, everything else will be pretty much accounted for this entire structure of this Let's Play itself, and something tells me I will show off the Howl rooms until for later, because I noticed there's one of them is being shown on the staff credit sequence. Now of course, I can assure you that just like the forms of how it does it on most ports or remakes essentially, that basically not only does it show us the original staff members who originally worked on the original version, but also with certain staff members who also worked on the port or remake. So, you know, kind of like the same thing from the likes of the forms of, I would say, Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, alongside with the forms of Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, at least as far as I'm aware, in addition to the forms of maybe Captain Toad Treasure Tracker as well, along with any others too, which I can't possibly think about in the top of my head. So, but either way though, with that being said though, yeah, that's as far as I can usually say about for this point, especially about the fact that, well, obviously I'm now onto the forms of the new tour recently, from the likes of Mario Kart Tour recently. That's what it appears to be. Yeah, you see that image right there? As far as what Megalore's shape looks like, that will be important because obviously about the fact that, as I mentioned this before, that once you beat story mode for the first time, you do able to unlock Megalore Epilogue, which it will be interesting to able to check that particular mode up, especially concerning about the fact that this could be something more related to one of those side modes you do unlock in not only in Kirby Triple, is that supposed to be Vanpool? That's one of those game developers or something? I have no idea what that particular company stands for, but I digress. So either way, with that being said though, we got the endings up this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. Is that we'll hit back onto the regular story mode to tackle through 9 challenge stages until we get 100% completion. Yes, there's more to come. See you then.